So I really don't know whether you are a Big Bang Theory fan or not. Anyone? A big fan? You are a big fan?
All right.
Wonderful. Have you ever watched anything of the Big Bang Theory?
Not much.
Not much, no.
Maybe.
No. But as you can see here, it's just the Big Bang Theory as a case study, helping us to realize how important popular culture is for all of us, but for the young people especially. And Big Bang Theory goes straight to the heart of popular culture today. It has been aired in 77 countries all over the world for a lot of years, and actually ending on the 16th of May 2019, that is last Thursday, in the US. And there will be spoilers maybe, because I'll give you some pointers to what's going on in the last season, the 12th season. But as it says here, the next to the last episode, Unraveling the Mystery of Big Bang Farewell, and the very last, named The Change Constant, the Stockholm Syndrome. But when I clicked into the CBS website from here, of course, I was denied access. We are in the wrong country, even the wrong continent. So no spoilers when it comes to that. But these nerds living in Pasadena, California, working as scientists, and I say nerds because that is how they are portraying themselves. But it is such humor in that series that has caught the attention all over the world. And if I may, this is Bernadette and Howard, and they are married. Ray, I spoil, he won't get married throughout the whole series. Penny and Leonard, and Sheldon and Amy. And this may be a spoiler as well, they get married in the end. But the key thing is not whether there are couples or not, but the very close relationship, friendship between these people, and how what they are working at really depicts their whole lifestyle. And sometimes I think, oh, as a Christian, I want everything to be marked by my biblical faith. And they mirror how scientism actually is mirrored in their whole life. The introduction that millions of people, young people primarily, but also my age, have watched over and over and over and over and over again in this most popular, really, the most popular television series ever. It's not only the CBS that boasts about that, it's true. I have been teaching in Kenya, students, and when there is a break, I find it's very interesting just to walk around and look over their shoulders, and over again, what do they watch? The last episode of The Big Bang Theory, or one of the earlier episodes that they really are dying to get a repetition from. So, what's being communicated here? I have the text on the next slide, the verbal text that is. But without getting that, what is the immediate message that you think people take home from the intro?
Evolution.
Yeah, evolution. And what is this evolution linked up to? What sort of worldview?
Naturalism.
Yeah. So it's immediately created a sense in us that there is a gulf, a split, a dichotomy between evolution and faith, with facts, as they put it, but look at this. you may like to sing it, especially you who know it. Our whole universe was in a hot, dense state when nearly 14 billion years ago expansion started. Wait! The Earth began to cool, the Automoros began to drool, Neanderthals developed tools, we built the wall, we built the pyramids, math, science, history, unraveling the mystery that all started with a big bang. Bang! But if we step aside for a moment, not being as intelligent as we are, not knowing that this is supposed actually to be a case study showing how naturalism is underpinning quite a bit of popular culture today. And just look at these lines. Can any other worldview say the same? Or does it have to be a naturalistic worldview? I think, yeah. Exactly. But we, as most people all over the world, immediately opt for, oh, this is naturalism. And that is primarily because the Big Bang has been sort of hijacked, and the whole evolution hijacked by thinking it just started by pure chance. There is no way whatsoever that there can be a creator behind. So I find that very demanding, actually, because it tells me about a meta-story surrounding us in our times, that there is definitely a split here. So it's an indication of Big Bang, the cosmology. It is an indication of evolution, that is biology, an indication of human progress, history, scientism, no God, and friendship, because we end there in that nice atmosphere around the table. They are joking, having food, enjoying themselves. What is at the center here? Who is at the center?
Humans.
Yeah. It's we, or even more, me. Which also goes very well with one of the meta stories in our time, individualism. It's an enormous focus on what we can do as humans and what an individual can do as a human being. Friendship. I know that not all of you are deeply into the Big Bang Theory, but just from the opening scene, you get the warm colors and you sense a loving atmosphere between these people. Does that give any pointer to what it's like being human? We have our biblical glasses on. I sort of think, yeah, we are created for fellowship. We are created for relationships. And very often in popular culture, in the stories, what we see is that the relationship is primarily between the same age group. Here, we don't have very healthy relationships between them and those of the parents' generation who turn up. That's quite far away from being a healthy relationship. And so often, when I dig into popular culture, television series, films, especially television series, I get a mirror of the saying, we have to be our own family. Young people saying, we have to be our own family. And you may see that in your church among the young people. You may, as a youth worker, have seen that, and I have seen it. By the way, I work as a university lecturer, associate professor at a Christian university college in Norway. And we teach journalism, communication, and I'm responsible, used to be, and now my colleague and husband has taken over the main responsibility for the communication and worldview course, because I do quite a bit of other stuff. But what we try to do is what John Stott encourages all of us to do. Listen to the stories surrounding us. And first of all, having listened to the biblical stories mean that we can relate the biblical story to the story surrounding us, meaning that we find echoes of truth and we find a lot of tension when comparing the biblical story and the stories around us. So I find that Big Bang Theory is worth digging into. A very good friend of mine and myself will write a article about it later this year, and hopefully, well, and that'll be in English, so hopefully it'll be of help for you. But what about young Sheldon? It's very funny, and he's very smart, and of course, he is supposed to be Sheldon at a young age, so it's a spin-off of the Big Bang Theory. They found out that it would be great to show the environment that Sheldon was supposed to be raised in, with a mother quite conservative in a Baptist setting in Texas. And he being so smart that he keeps asking questions to the pastor, and as you rightly put it, the pastor always comes out as the underdog, always. And I think that quote is quite telling. It's from a church setting where young Sheldon raises his hand and sort of arrests the pastor in the midst of the sermon. And then a kind pastor invites Sheldon up front, and they sit down on the two stairs and they talk things over. That is, it's not a proper dialogue. Sheldon saying, science is fact, religion is faith, I prefer facts. And that particular episode, Sheldon goes out from the church and you can hear him thinking and promising himself, I will dig into the facts and keep on asking questions. And if we just pause for a moment, now that young Sheldon is out, it came from 2017, and it'll be spread to more and more countries as we go along. What does that give of an impact and an image of the Big Bang Theory? Promoting it into the specific direction so that we get an even stronger message of religious faith, specifically the Christian religious faith. The biblical faith is a blind faith, whereas science has nothing to do with the God. Science is facts. Faith is just blind faith. So for me, this is a challenge when it comes to work with the youngest generations, because they love young Sheldon. As I said, my colleague and I, Ingvild, we are about to write really in-depth analysis of the Big Bang Theory. She did a very good survey earlier from the first episodes, figuring out that what's being expressed in the Big Bang Theory is scientism, belief in science as an infallible source of knowledge and truth. And at the same time, the television series devalues religion and Christian faith as naive beliefs with no reference to reality. So that is sort of wrapping up her research in the first place. It's not all that has to be said, and throughout, when she does the analysis, there are a lot of things to confirm. But that doesn't mean that we stop by all the good things that we confirm, that we address the tensions, and we would like to take the next step, showing what is really the truth, and helping the young peoples especially. Well, introduction, that refers to what's on your app. Because I wanted us to be drawn into the Big Bang Theory before we see a bit more of what is meant by stories and worldviews, by popular culture and the genre, and then we will see quite a few clips and discuss. Is that an okay way forward? I might even put on my watch so that I make sure that we have the time. Stories and worldviews. Jesus told stories. The Bible is full of stories, and we talk about the meta story of the Bible, the creation, the fall, the salvation, and the wonderful day when everything would be just perfect. And all other stories in the Bible linked to the meta story of the Bible. So the biblical authors, God told stories, Jesus told stories, the power of stories. Ben Okri from Nigeria, but living in the UK, he has won a lot of awards. He's such a wonderful writer, and he knows what he's doing. He says, stories are the secret reservoir of values. Change the stories individuals and nations live by and tell themselves, and you change the individuals and nations. So we have already pointed out a very important story in the West of today. The story about putting me in the center, the story about thinking of religion as something that may be good for you if it functions for you, but it's blind anyway, whereas science is fact. This dichotomy between faith and fact. But if you think of your home situation, the young people, what story do they tell themselves about what a good life is all about? Just a small glimpse into a situation in just a month ago when a boy in his 20s died, and his parents thought that he was so lonely. He was a gamer. And for the funeral, you may have got that in your newsrooms as well, there were enormous amount of young people, excuse me, that's very bad English, a lot of young people came from other countries even to the funeral because they had got to know this guy via the gaming. So there are more to it, but it's a tendency that we take at face value, and we can't just leave it like that. And when we go to research from Barna Group and so on, young people say, we want friendship, but it's not the whole truth. As you point out, some people think that they are okay on their own as long as they have their Wi-Fi. You have this saying on the wall when I was to teach teachers at a high school in Denmark, and it was a boarding school, and I saw this on the wall saying, as long as I have my bed, Wi-Fi, and coffee, I'm fine. So that goes straight into what you're saying. Bed, Wi-Fi, and coffee, then I'm okay. But the stories that are told via the popular media, news media, all over, they are powerful and they shape our thinking. And Philip Pullman, he actually is Sir Philip Pullman. I think he was knighted by the Queen just the other week. You may know him via Dark Materials, you saw some of the films earlier, but the key thing is that he is a well-known, very clever writer. He has a wonderful pen. That's why he has won so many awards. And he knows exactly what he wants with his writing, with his stories. He will teach that all religion is false, even dangerous maybe, at least it's false. So all stories teach, he says. And I line up with him and say, yeah, he's right. All stories teach, whether the storyteller intends them to or not. They teach the world we create, they teach the morality we live by, they teach it much more effectively than moral precepts and instructions. So he knows what he's doing. Do we know what we are doing when we tell stories from the pulpit or face-to-face with people? When we frame our message in a story? It's powerful. Let's be aware of not manipulating. It's a wonderful tool. And a lot of research today, when it deals with how young people develop their worldview, the researchers point towards the stories in popular culture as much more important than what's being communicated in their homes and in churches and schools. So that is also something for us who are involved in church settings to remember. We should listen to what's being communicated in these powerful stories, link up to them. Because they are not just entertainment. Underneath, there's always more to it, a message. Whether the author, the scriptwriter, is aware of it or not. And that's quite tricky, isn't it? Because we can easily, oh no, it's just entertainment, and I'm sure they just want to earn some money. But if we take into face value that it's impossible not to have a worldview, every person, whether you would like to say that a worldview is like glasses that we view everything through, or lenses, or a frame for our work, or the platform, there are so many ways of illustrating what a worldview is all about. It's impossible not to have a worldview. And therefore, it will shine through, as Philip Pullman says, either the one writing intends them to or not, it will shine through. And there will be a message there that is rooted in worldviews. Capital worldviews, because very often in these stories we find traces of different worldviews. And sometimes it's very clear this is the one. Is this an okay indicator, helping us to be sure of what we are doing? We are not forcing our views on the texts. An atheist like Philip Pullman, and we could quote a lot of people who say just the same. And they say it because it's impossible not to have a worldview. Here is James Sire's way of putting it. Here at ELF, we have a lot of different definitions, and even I have been working on this, and I could have given you one, but I think this one is great, specifically when we dig into stories, because he says that a worldview, yeah, it's a commitment, a fundamental orientation of the heart, you know, the center of our personality, but it can be expressed as a story. And here we are, linked up to the stories. Or we can have a set of presuppositions. The story bit I find very intriguing. There's assumptions which may be true, partially true, entirely false, but we hold them, consciously or unconsciously, about the basic construction of reality, and that provides the foundation on which we live and move and have our being. And of course, we are all with Paul now, aren't we? We live and move and have our being. Paul quoting a poet from Greece, saying, yeah, there are glimpses of truth here. If we take into consideration that everyone is created in the image of a creative God, there are glimpses of truth in what other people who hold quite different worldviews from the biblical create. Of course, sometimes it's really just rubbish, and you have to be very, very careful in order to figure out any true thing. But the truth can actually be, oh, this mirrors sin. This mirrors the fall. It's still truth. So when we dig into the stories, we try to figure out what traces can we find within this story of a worldview story. So that is the key reason for me sticking to James Sire's definition of worldview, because I find it so holistic. It's not just the intellectual part, but it's the center of life, and it's where I actually move and live. So in popular culture, we are exposed to so many stories that have traces of worldviews interwoven to it. They are influencers par excellence. Ted Turneau, Czech Republic, you may know him. We may all know him because he has been to ELF for many, many years. In one of his writings, he says that popular culture is actually made up of cultural works whose media, genres, or venues tend to be widespread and widely received in our everyday world. It's a wonderful way of saying it's all over and it's related to our daily life. It resonates with what it's like to be a human being today. And it's accessible for the masses. It's not the elite. It's for you and me. Sorry if you belong to the elite, but it's for everyone. And there we find one of the key reasons why we as Christians should engage with popular culture. We often say that popular culture mirrors the society it helps to create. It mirrors the society it helps to create. It's not that everything that goes on in popular culture will end up in real life, but still there is a back and forth there, which I find very important. And he says in another way, popular culture is a system of texts that find their way into our everyday worlds, shaping our reality. And the word text is important here. In our postmodern world, we hear in different ways that, oh, everything is text. All that there is are texts, and we are but the texts that we make of our own living and in dialogue with others. And I think we should make sure that the postmodern way of thinking what truth is all about, truth is something that's just true for me, just true for you, that is related to these texts. And it's shaping our reality, the way we view reality, but also how our societies is being changed, the politics. I remember when Obama became the first, we all know, colored president of the US, I wrote a tiny little piece on how the television series The West Wing had a colored president as part of the series. And the opposition, and then everyone opened up. And I couldn't but see that that was mirrored now in real life. And I wondered, can it be so simple? I didn't say it was a one-to-one relationship, but I sort of thought, well, the American people have had an exposure to the fact that it's possible to be an American president with a different skin color. They got it into their homes day after day after day for weeks, for months, for years. And then I realized, when working on this small piece, that the one who wrote most of Obama's speeches in the campaign was the one who had written most of the scripts for The West Wing. So there is something going on here. And we should be sort of part of it, listening. And I pray if some more could be out there and make wonderful manuscripts, series, films, to make a difference, a better story. But these people, they shape, in one way or another, the view of reality for a lot of people. Not because they are on their own in doing it, but they blend in with a lot of other stories with the same underpinning worldview. And the genre, the sitcom, is so immensely powerful because of the humor. Once you get people laughing, they are listening to whatever, and you can tell them almost everything, George Carlin says. I am wondering, the fact that we laugh so much. Well, do you laugh when you watch The Big Bang Theory, by the way? Did you laugh the very first time even?
I don't remember.
You don't remember? I remember very well that I didn't laugh at all in the first place. I hadn't cracked the code. So they were so nerdy, can we say that in English? And I just didn't catch it. But my colleagues and my students, they were all in. And I thought, okay, I have to do some analysis here, not just of my colleagues and the students, but of what's actually going on. And I cracked the code, and I find myself laughing and laughing and laughing. And then I step back, asking myself, what am I actually laughing about? Do I laugh with or at? And to me, that is a question I try to keep asking myself whenever I'm approached to a story in popular culture. What do I actually laugh at? And we know, of course, here at ELF, it's wonderful with the jokes, and we relax, and we get more open. And that's wonderful. We are created like that, but that can also be manipulative, as being put here. And I wonder, since we laugh at the way they act in their nerdy life when they try to apply scientism to their daily life, do we then actually realize that living according to pure naturalism or scientism is not possible? Or do we laugh and we put everything into the basket of the nerds so that we don't see that in one way the Big Bang Theory is portraying how naturalism is not functioning as a worldview in the daily life? What do you think of that? Did you understand my question? Because I nearly don't understand it myself. I'm sorry. Do you see what I'm getting at? Because from one perspective, I wonder if we really look at what they are doing, their actions, what they are saying, they are totally helpless. If it hadn't been for Penny, they would have had great problems in just organizing themselves and live an ordinary life. So if we really dig into that, we see glimpses of how this worldview doesn't function on a daily basis. But honestly, I don't think most people see that. I think what they see is the main message that fact is related to science and faith is related to blind faith. Naturalism as a worldview, of course, we can go deep into that, but that's not why we are here. But they tend to view supernaturalism, you and me that is, as clinging to non-scientific, non-empirical justifications for beliefs, the opposite of objectivity. At least that is one clear-cut way of explaining it. Not many Sundays ago, we had the texts about Thomas in our church. And Thomas is very often called the doubter. And we know why, because he doubted and he said, I don't believe until I see him and can feel him, the wounds in his side and so on. But faith, the Christian faith, is not the opposite of evidence. It's the opposite of seeing, isn't it? We have evidence, but we haven't seen him ourselves. That is such a contrary view from this. Because here, it is as if everything is blind belief. Welcome. Everything is blind belief. And it's Carl Sagan, the beautifully made Cosmos series, but such a heartbreaking entering point when he says the cosmos is all there is, all there ever was, and all there ever will be. And if we look carefully at the Big Bang Theory, we'll see traces of this. And we will do that in a few moments. I just want you to relax in the fact that we are not imposing views on the Big Bang Theory. We are actually doing a substantial research work. We are doing textual analysis, content analysis from worldview theory. I first dug into this in my master's degree ages ago. And I developed this tool that has proved to be so useful. And I have blended it with Tony Watkins, who is here. Tony Watkins, he has a book called Focus, The Art and Soul of Cinema. And I'm very pleased to have Tony very often as a guest lecturer at Gimlekollen School of Journalism and Communication back home in Norway. He is very much into also all the aesthetic parts, the level of the aesthetic. That's the right way of putting it in English, yeah. But I say the preparatory stage, when we enter the text, is to be aware of how do we feel, and what is the reason for us feeling like that, and to evaluate the beauty or the wonderful craftsmanship that has been put into, whether it's the series Big Bang Theory or a movie or whatever, it's art. All the beauty should evaluate that. It's honoring the creator when it's good art. So we don't step over the first stage, definitely not. But the key thing for us now is the main stage, the worldview level, where we know that all worldviews say something about values, say something about what it's like being a human being. They say something about reality. Is there more out there, or is it, as being portrayed in the Big Bang Theory, what we can feel, the science, the naturalism, that's all that there is? But what do you think of my last point, faith defined as trust and search for meaning? In my working on worldview, I really felt there was something missing when they linked values, view of what it's like being human, view of reality, and then full stop. Because that would mean that worldview equals a religious worldview. Then we could just as well talk about religions. But we talk about worldviews. That is part of being human. And if you put your trust in a god or gods or something spiritual, it's a religious worldview. And you have a wider circle around a religion. And back home, we have a well-known, back home being Norway, we have a well-known politician who is an atheist, and he is very proud to be an atheist. And a couple of years ago, he gave an interview saying, I have an atheistic faith. And I nearly got in touch with him in order to say, thank you for being so honest. Thank you for being transparent. Because everyone has to find meaning somewhere, to put that trust somewhere. Whether it's in your own intelligence or your core or your relationship or whatever. So I actually added faith defined as trust and search for meaning in the concept of what a worldview consists of. And I'm very happy that no one has challenged me in that yet. Maybe you will. You're welcome to, and I'll try to do my best to put it back again. And the follow-up stage, of course, the normative. We should never ever stop by identifying the traits of worldview without thumbs up to make it easy, thumbs down when it comes to conflict and correspondence to the Christian faith. So if we now go to the clips and say that what is being said and done, that is the tip of the iceberg. That is where we are drawn in with our emotions due to the angle, the music, the beauty. That might be ugly sometimes. And out from that, from what's being said and done, we can actually identify values. You have humanity, reality, and the trust. So I use this as an image of how we do this as researchers. And it gives a much easier entrance point. Do you agree, or am I too optimistic? I even used that in Kenya, and my husband said, Margunn, They don't have a clue what an iceberg is like in Kenya. Oh, I'm sure they do, I said. We have Titanic. Yeah, of course they knew what an iceberg was all about, due to Titanic. And we see throughout the series quite a hierarchy of how people are viewed, whether they are intelligent or not. And we also see a very, very clear tendency to have their identity in what they perform as scientists. And we have this episode when one of them didn't get on the rocker. And who am I? I was not there, out in space. Who am I if I can't work as a scientist? And that may also strike something in us. I was out from work for some months due to health reasons. Being a Christian, I've been a Christian for all my life, and knew then, as I know now, where I have my identity, what gives me value, and still I could sit in the rocking chair in our living room and pray to God and wonder, who am I if I can never ever teach again? You see? So what we are doing now also open up for deep conversations with the young people going into their life, our life, and mirror what it's like being human. How we can define our own worth and other people's worth out from their performances. And in this time, 2019, we live in an age of the younger ones being the generation perfection. Not just that they have to do a lot of stuff to show I am worth something because I perform, but they want to perform perfection. So sometimes some actually say the generation perfect performance. Actually, if we had had the network up and going here, I would have showed the clip. But Sheldon has been ruined from something that he was very proud about. So he went back home to Texas and thought, oh, my whole career is ruined. It's not just this part, but my whole career. And then the friends come and say, no, we want you back. Can't you please forgive us? And no, because now I will be in Texas and teach evolution to creationists. And the mother says, that is your opinion, mind you. And then Sheldon says, no, evolution is not an opinion, it's fact. Oh, but that is your opinion. I'm sorry, I can't act it out properly, but you see what I'm aiming at? And what the mother does, she goes straight into a subjective view. It's not the truth. Christianity is not the truth. It's actually just an opinion that she sticks to. And that challenges me. I think it challenges you as well, how easily we, in the midst of the multitude of religious and secular worldviews around us, without wanting it, withdraw and say, yeah, but that's my point of view. Jesus is true for me, but it's actually the truth. The dominant naturalism, well, you can get this as a PDF from me if you want to. It's just the end here. The very, very ironic Sheldon part saying, and then I believe that God created the world in 6 days, and on the seventh day, he made you to annoy me. So they have pointers to the biblical story, but it's always framed in humor and, oh, how stupid. How stupid. You know, there's a foundational idea in string theory that the whole universe may be a hologram. What do you mean? Well, the holographic principle suggests that what we all experience every day in 3 dimensions may really just be information on a surface located at the farthest reaches of our cosmos. So it's possible that our lives are really just acting out a painting on the largest canvas in the universe. What's that? Hard to grasp, I think, for most young people. But still, it's framed and covered in science. And I thought, yeah, that is it. But there is a longing. Are our lives just acting out a painting on the largest canvas in the universe? So there's a real pointer to what if scientism is true? Then that would be the case. So for every thinking person relating to the Big Bang Theory, one sees how hollow the worldview is, both in the daily life and when it comes to these tough questions. And that is also the other, what we had from the clip. I think you should make her finger like Saturn and put a ring on it. You know, it's just also the way of it showing that this is the right thing to do. It has to refer to science to make it proper. Undermining religion, and specifically Christian beliefs, as I said. And this is nearly hard to say in English for us not being native English speakers. But the original title was a rederivation of Maxwell's equations regarding electromagnetism. I dumbed it down because some of the more religious people in town were starting to say I was a witch. So that taps into another story moving around about what intellectual people say and what religious is all about and what it means being a witch and so on. So it's there over and over and over again, and we should be aware of it. The larger picture, because this is just one out of many popular sitcoms and other genres in popular culture, but it is absolutely the most popular ever. And no one can come up to me and say, aha, but still it's the religious smorgasbord that should be of interest for us. We have this frame that is secular, and within that frame people are really searching for something more, but they pick and choose what suits them, and we know what the truth is all about. And we know that underpinning the textbooks, underpinning teaching in schools and the academy, underpinning the different stories in popular culture, there is a mixture of secular humanism, naturalism, all these secular worldviews. And if it's okay with you, of course, a blind religious faith is okay, but never ever relate that to real life, and definitely not into science or other subjects. So time is about up, and Tim Keller, his reflections are worth listening to. I quoted him actually in the outline, and I just very briefly now refer to a couple of sentences from him when he says that the misunderstanding of what Christianity is all about in culture today comes mainly from the stories in popular culture, but also in stories in the news. Stories. And we should identify and clarify and evaluate. That is what we are doing if we go into interpreting together with the young people. Ask questions. They are thinking persons. They are trained to think and discuss in school. They ought to have what we call critical thinking in place, because that is what they are taught in school. And when they come to our churches, why don't we challenge them with some critical thinking? Also, when relating our Christian faith to the stories in popular culture. So we should, I think, try to weave that into our teaching. That's what I try to do with the students and with the younger ones back home. And I think we have to do something along those lines. And that is the only way of doing our part in the formation of a new generation, God's generation, that is the future of Europe. And I just pray God's blessing in our lives, personally, but also when it comes to relating both in the family, in our churches, in our neighborhood, to the younger ones who are so influenced by these stories and are easily, even though they are intellectually strong, but they're easily fooled by the dichotomy that is told over and over again: faith, facts, split. And that creates a sort of cognitive dissonance, doesn't it? From what they are taught from you, in your home and in your church, about the biblical worldview, and what they are taught in these stories. So I wish you all the best and God's blessing in that.